Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of You Bet CaneSport with Lee Sterling. I'm Gary Furman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined by Lee Sterling himself as we take a look at the Miami Hurricanes from the betting perspective. And Lee, the Miami Hurricanes from the betting perspective have gotten kind of complicated in the last week or so. The Clemson week was wild, man. That line was all over the place. It started out at -3. Nobody had any clue that Tyler Van Dyke wasn't playing. Somehow, naturally, that fell off the radar. And then all of a sudden, they find out on game day Tyler Van Dyke's not playing, and everybody tries catching up like gangbusters. The line soared all the way to 7, and money came flying in on the Clemson Tigers, and the money lost last week. Lee, your thoughts on it all?
Well, great move by Mario. He kept it quiet until very late, so really no way for them to prepare for Williams. And I do the same thing. There's no real rules governing college football coaches right now. As far as gambling, I think they eventually will have to do something because they're going to want the integrity of the game, the integrity of the bet. The NFL has done that. So I think that you're going to see in the NFL them take away the quarterback with Jalen Hurts where you can push a guy from behind. I think they're going to make it so that if a running back or receiver has the ball, that's fine. I think eventually they're going to do away with pushing the quarterback from behind on the quarterback sneak.
And I think the tush push or whatever they call it.
Push and then in college football, I think they're going to have to do away with hiding injuries like this because, let's say this was one player, obviously a very big player. The line started at 3, went to 3.5 late in the week, went down to 3 Friday and Saturday morning. And then when the news came out, up to like 6.5. So just shows you one player, as good as it can be. If your team rallies around them for one game, you can make adjustments. And if you play hard, you can overcome that. But let's say there's a case where 8 or 10 guys are suspended. You're going to have a lot of people really upset. And they're going to have to do something. So as sports gambling, still the 3 major states aren't legal. Florida's one. We've talked about that. Texas and California. Once probably 1 or 2 of those 3 become legal, I think you'll see some new rules that are put in for even the college football because the NFL, they have 4 different times during the week where they have to report injuries.
Well, you have to be negligent if you're in a decision-making role in sports if you ignore sports betting. Let's face it, the games are fun, they're entertaining, people love their sports. I think if you took sports betting out of the equation, your viewerships would be cut in half. Do you think that's fairly cut in half?
These Tuesday, Wednesday, Gary, these Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday games, they wouldn't exist. I'm hearing that we're eventually going to see 9 a.m. games on Saturday morning. Why? Mm-hmm. Betting. Another window. You're going to have the 9 o'clock games, 12 noon, 3:30, 7 o'clock, and 10:30. 5 windows there.
Yeah, so they had to be crazy to ignore the sports bettor, and ignoring the sports bettor is not having mandatory injury reports. I agree with you. College football is going to have to go with that to them at some point. And, I don't understand how this Tyler Van Dyke thing got covered up all last week. It was well known here on Monday of the week that he was walking around like Frankenstein, and it wasn't looking really good. Now, we didn't know for sure. And they tried to stand out a bunch of smoke screens and say, oh, we think he's going to play and things like that. But, he was close on game day. You saw him walking around. He looked a lot better on game day than he did earlier in the week, but just missed way too much practice time. But the other thing I want to ask you about, Lee, is sometimes you can have too much information. And betting certainly applies. And sometimes people are telling you stories and they're giving you all the gory details and you throw up your hands. Please stop. Too much information. Okay. Well, It applies to the sports bettor too, because last week you're getting loaded with information on Saturday. That line is flying all over the place. It's up to 7 because everyone's betting Clemson. Well, guess what? Everybody that bet Clemson lost. A lot of money last week. So, sometimes, Lee, you can have too much, huh?
Right. That's why they call it gambling, Gary. Sounds too good to be true. Sometimes it is. What's interesting about the 2 weeks, I don't know if you thought about this. So the week before, Miami fumbles at the half-yard line going in. First half. Same thing happens on the first drive to Clemson. So I don't know what it is. If you fumble inside the 1 going in for a touchdown, we've seen it 2 occasions where, looked like the team's doing pretty well. And I don't know if I've ever seen Shipley. He fumbles some, but not that much. But inside the 1 yard line and also with Parrish with Miami. So we'll see if any other teams have players fumble going into the end zone, and we'll see how that affects the spread. Maybe some in-game betting here. Maybe, mentally it affects a team. It's like, I don't know if you know this, when a team has a pick six against them. So, and they're driving for a score, the other team's territory inside the red zone, over 85% of the time you lose the wager. So it's obviously a 10 or 14 point switch, but there's got to be something as far as, mentally, having that go against you. And maybe there's something about fumbling inside the 1 yard line. So we'll track.
Well, how about it happened to Miami again, too, with Brashard Smith? The only difference was Jacoby George.
That's right.
Jacoby George was hustling and got that ball, or else the whole game might have been different.
So maybe we should say you fumble inside the 1 and the opponent recovers. So, yeah.
But
tale of 2 weeks for Miami.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. All right. So the Canes, they beat Clemson. Yep. Everybody who didn't bet on Clemson is euphoric. Miami gets the monkey off their back, finally beats the Clemson Tigers. It's not the same Clemson. Nobody's trying to say it is, but it's still a very good Clemson with a lot of very good players, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, that secondary they have is elite. You're going to see those guys in the National Football League, I'm pretty sure. But Miami finds a way to grind it out and win the game. And now everyone's all bullish about Miami again, to the point where the line gets set for this week, okay? And they're playing a Virginia team that just upset North Carolina at North Carolina, okay? A week after North Carolina beat Miami up there, the line gets set at 19.5. The Miami Hurricanes 19.5 point favorites against Virginia. Lee, is the line too big? Your thoughts?
So, full disclosure, I've wagered on one Miami game that I've given my clients, and that was Texas A&M game. Felt strongly about that. I'm not wagering on this game. Didn't wager last week. Didn't wager the week before. But I will say this. If I had to choose a side, and I would say that Virginia might be the right side here. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke can't be 100%. I watched the Virginia tape against North Carolina. I've seen every game this year. They're improved. Their quarterback, a transfer from Monmouth, name is Tony Muskett. He's okay. He's a nice, decent college quarterback. Not going to play at the next level, but he made plays last week. Really good play calling. They use 2 running backs they rotate in. They got a transfer receiver, a kid named Malik Washington, kid from Northwestern. I don't know how Northwestern wasn't using him. 5'9", like about 190, but dynamic once he gets the ball. So they've improved. Now we look back and we're looking at some of their losses. They lost to James Madison, 36-35. At the time you're thinking, like, that's a bad loss. James Madison hasn't lost a game. James Madison looked really good. If you watched him on TV, they dominated Marshall. I think they won something like 20-9. Marshall didn't score an offensive point. They scored on a safety and a kickoff return. So they are improved. They went through the death of a couple of their teammates last year and had to cut the season short. Maybe they're finding themselves now. They're 2-5. I think they're thinking, hey, if we can pull the upset here, we got a chance against Georgia Tech. We're sitting at 4-5. We got a chance to go to a bowl. The end of their schedule isn't that difficult. So I think this is a big game for them. I thought the line would be like 14 and a half here. So there are some weaknesses on their team. Their linebackers are not great in coverage, not real bad as far as like play fakes and hitting them in the flat. If you can go vertical on their linebackers. So used to be guys like Shockey he would destroy teams like this, or Winslow. We haven't used our tight ends a lot. If we use them vertical, I think we'll have some success. I think receivers, I think that Restrepo should have a big game here. They have trouble with slot receivers. So as long as Tyler doesn't stare down his receivers, and that's what I thought Williams did really well. He might have had some plays that weren't great plays, but he wasn't staring down receivers. Usually you see that from true freshman quarterbacks. Overall, a very successful debut for him starting. And the kids came up big. I mean, the most important thing is, I don't know if there's any one player you go, maybe Smith, except for the fumble, had a great game, but it was a collective effort. The kids came together. Week before, we have a good first half and we die. Next game, at halftime, third quarter, everyone thinks it's over, and we fight back. The only negative, I would say, was the coaching staff. When we had the ball, we had time, I thought, after it was a tie game, to go for a field goal. Didn't understand that play calling, but nothing's going to be perfect. I think Miami wins this game something like 30-20.
All right, so we got the inflated line, minus 19.5 for Miami. Lee Sterling says it's too high. Don't play Virginia on the money line now. He's not saying that, but he thinks Virginia could cover that 19.5 spread and keep it somewhat close at Hard Rock Stadium this Saturday. All right, Lee, another game I wanted to talk to you about. Another team that sometimes can have lines that are a little high. You got to be really careful, even though they might, for the third season in a row, be the best team in the country. We'll see how it plays out. That's the Georgia Bulldogs. They're minus 14.5 in the big game in Jacksonville against the Florida Gators. And man, I don't know about I was not bullish on Florida coming into the season. They have managed to win a couple games. I did not think they would win. I personally don't like this matchup for them against Georgia, but can the Bulldogs cover by more than 2 touchdowns? Your thoughts?
So if Brock Bowers was playing, I'd lay 19.5, 20 points. I don't know if I've ever seen a tight end worth more to a team. So the question is, how valuable is he? Well, they've gone through half a season. He's caught 41 balls for 567 yards and 4 touchdowns. He catches like 7, 8, 9 balls a game. The next best receiver, Dominic Lovick, 18 receptions. Their quarterback's nothing special. They're by far a better team than Florida, but it's a rivalry game. It's on a neutral field. If this was at Georgia, I'd probably go the other way, but a neutral field. Both teams are coming off a bye. It's not like Florida has scored against good opponents, but the last 2 games he scored 38 and 41 against Vanderbilt and South Carolina. So maybe they're getting it going here a little bit. Georgia, 1-6 against the spread this year. So not a good covering team. Obviously, inflated the lines are. And I think they win the game something like 28-20, 28-22. I think 14.5 is a little too much, Gary. So only because Bowers is out and they don't have that. They just can't move down the field like they normally will. And I think Florida, they maybe can come with a couple trick plays. They got nothing to lose. Give it a shot here. I don't see Florida winning, but I take Georgia to win, but Florida to cover the 14.5.
And the Florida State Seminoles, another darling team of the sports better, they're laying 20 to Wake Forest. Another line that seems like it might be getting a little high.
Maybe.
Did you have a thought on that game?
I probably would still play Florida State here. I mean, I thought Duke, there was a lot of games last week as far as betting. The team that covered the spread was not the right side. I mean, Duke, 4th and 3 at the 7-yard line, up 3 points. What are they doing going for going for it there. Should have just kicked the field goal, taken the points. And then their quarterback, I think, gets hurt on that play or the play before. And they're done. I mean, they're right in there in the game. Just
too many coaches out there are looking at their analytics sheets instead of
Yep.
valuing points. We see it a lot more in college football than we do in the NFL, where games tend to come down to the late minutes in the fourth quarter and every point counts. They don't seem to value points as much in college, Lee.
No, you also have to, really look at how your team is doing in the game. And you have to understand your team. I think that's really important. Mike Elko's been great this year and great since he came over to Duke, but I thought he mismanaged the game there. So I like Florida State. Wake Forest had, Hartman leave. They had so many key guys leave the program here. I don't have much on offense, and they've always had a poor defense. So doesn't look like someone had a chance to knock off Florida State. Two teams did, Clemson and Duke, and either player fail or coach fail caused them to lose, and in that case, also lose and not cover.
Well, you got to be hopeful that the Miami Hurricanes will take care of business these next 2 weeks and go into Tallahassee with some momentum and confidence and give it their best shot. See if they can screw up Florida State's undefeated season. That'll be a fun night. Looking forward to that in a couple weeks. But first, we got business to take care of at Hard Rock on Saturday against Virginia. All right, Lee, Paramount Sports, the numbers at the bottom of the screen, 1-800-400-9741. You got any specials this week for anybody?
I do. I know a lot of people like to wager, like to have some fun. So I came up with a special. This is the rare 2 weeks, Gary, where we've got football going on. We've got World Series for 2 weeks. We've got basketball started on Tuesday in the NBA and hockey. 7 plays each on Thursday and Friday. You want to purchase 7 plays, combined all 4 sports on Thursday, $17. Give me a shot. If you're with me, great.
Wow.
You don't need to do it on all sports, but let's say you're with me on one sport, want to try a couple other sports, or you're not with me for some reason or dropped off. Had a great year. So 7 selections Thursday, $17. 7 selections Friday, $17. Hopefully you make some money, and then you want to come aboard for a month or a season in each sport, or try a couple different sports. ParamountSports.com. or the number there, 800-400-9741.
All righty, Lee. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this weekend plays out. We thank you so much for your insight. We thank all of you out there for watching this week's edition of You Bet CaneSport with Lee Sterling. For Lee, I'm Gary. Thank you so much again, and we will see you next time, everybody.